Why did that work? No idea. Our video's stuck. Friends. Lovers. Oh, let me go through the whole opening all over again real fast. I'm going to tell you exactly what I just said that you could not hear due to technical difficulties, obviously way beyond our control. Thank you for joining us. Today is Sunday, October 22nd. This is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir. And this is... I have to go back in my notes here. This is tough. Tough times. That's what we're talking about. Day 295. 295th day of 2023, your best year yet. We're going to talk about why this is your best year yet and why it doesn't feel like that at all. Hard times. They were the best of times. They were the worst of times. Wrote Charles Dickens. Apparently we've been through this before. 70 days are left in the year for you to make this your best year yet. That means there's only 64 days until Christmas, 32 days until Turkey Day, or Crown Roast Day, or Prime Rib Day. Tell us what you're having for Thanksgiving. But Halloween is next week, 9 days. Well, we've got our candy bought. We've got the front yard decorated. Hopefully, we're going to get some crumb crunchers or candy munchers coming to our door on Halloween.
Do we have candy?
We do have candy.
Oh, I'm glad that you bought some.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I did not share with you because you've been extremely,
I've been trying to...
You've been amazing this year, and I don't want to tempt you with any of those goodies because we did buy the good stuff.
Ooh.
We don't get enough trick-or-treaters in our neighborhood, so, you got to go with the full-size candy bars and all that, all the good stuff.
Yes. Just in case Death shows up.
Yes.
And then you give him full-size Snicker bars.
Yes.
And he's like, we're good.
That's right. Just like the meme, just like the cartoon. Absolutely. I don't have the Facebook chat up. Let me do that real quick here. But I do see people in the chat. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. We are glad you are here. Your chat often makes the show. So very cool. I just gotta get it up on the Facebook side there. Oh yeah, and of course Jim Ashley is on the Facebook side. The author, the writer Jim Ashley, is in the house. So yes, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Real quick, a couple of real quick on this date that will relate to the topic at hand because it was on this day in 1962. 62. So 1 year before I had metaphysical status. JFK's address on the Cuban Missile Crisis shocks the nation. It's the craziest thing. We entered a Cold War with the Soviet Union. They were our allies in World War II, and then they weren't anymore because, of course, they were all along the bad guys. It's the craziest thing. Cold War. So, the United States now has atomic weapons developed for World War II, dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, with good reason, although people are still debating that one. So the Soviets, Cold War, were kind of fighting the communists. Let's put atomic weapons in Italy and Turkey. And for some reason, the Soviet Union didn't like that. And Khrushchev thinks, well, I'm going to put nuclear weapons in Cuba. Hell, you can swim from Cuba to Florida. Well, maybe if you have a piece of driftwood or something. Lord knows people have done it. It ain't that far away. The Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. Fortunately, that was resolved. Well, it may not be fortunate how it was resolved, but it was resolved basically by Kennedy and Khrushchev getting together and saying, what's going to be the fix for behind closed doors? Of course, they wouldn't say any of this publicly. Kennedy agrees to take the nuclear weapons out of Turkey. Khrushchev agrees no nukes in Cuba. There's some debate over whether or not they agreed about Italy, too. Cuban Missile Crisis, Cold War, Soviet Russia. What's that got to do with the best of times and the worst of times today in 2023? Well, it wasn't a Cold War. Now, this is a year before I was born, but we have war in Korea, the Korean War. It's interesting, we used to watch MASH when I was a kid, the television series, and I always assumed it was about Vietnam because that was the war going on when I was a little kid. Yeah. But no, it was actually before that. It was the Korean War was the setting for MASH. And yes, the Korean War is followed by the Vietnam War. And why are we in Vietnam? Why are we fighting a war? Why are we separating the South and the North Vietnamese? Because the Vietnamese of the North were the Viet Cong. In other words, the communists. We're fighting communism. We're trying to make sure Soviet Russia doesn't turn Korea communist, doesn't turn Vietnam communist. Well, you see how that worked out. It was not a just war. It was not a justified war. American lives should not have gone to that war. American dollars certainly shouldn't have gone to that war. But if we were going to fight that war, we should have fought it to win. My point being, I'm almost tempted to say my point being is, because that's one of my pet peeves. The word is doesn't come after being. That would be like saying the point being be. The point being, we didn't fight that war to win. And the war went on forever and cost us countless precious lives. And the atrocities which occurred in the Korean War were only dwarfed by the atrocities that occurred in the Vietnam War. The things that were done to American soldiers, but also to civilians, to the South Vietnamese, to innocent bystanders, as well as our military, remind one of what happened on October 7th in Israel. When I was a little kid, they were the best of times, and they were the worst of times. Real quick here, while we're talking Cuban Missile Crisis in Korea and Vietnam, what were American college students doing during the Korean War, during the Vietnam War? The same stuff that they're doing now. Burning American flags, saying America are the bad guys. Sending people like Jane Fonda over to say, these poor Vietnamese kids, we are the evil ones. You could argue because that war was less justified than what needs to happen now in the Middle East, we weren't morally clean, but we were absolutely the good guys compared to what else was going on there. And while we didn't have a compelling military reason to fight the communists, we did have good reason to fight the communists. Anyway, Cuban Missile Crisis, this date, 1962, 1976. 14 years later, what happens on this date? Red dye number 4 was banned by the US FDA because they figured out it caused tumors in the bladders of dogs. Well, that might be a good reason to be suspicious of it, but should it really have been outlawed? My only point there would be that, we find out some things aren't good for us, and we do eventually get rid of them. We do eventually find the truth. 2019, on this date, same-sex marriage is legalized and abortion is decriminalized in Northern Ireland. Just 4 years ago, same-sex marriage legalized. And this is as a result of Northern Ireland's assembly not being restored. Purely political reasons, but it was the right thing to happen. It was going to happen eventually. So happy Same-Sex Marriage Day to any of our same-sex listener partners in Northern Ireland. It's still amazing to me that same-sex marriage only became universal or federally recognized in 2015 in the U.S.
Right.
We're so used to it now, and it seems so obvious that should have and needed to happen. But I remember when I was young, people would say, no, those kind of relationships are unnatural. It's so weird.
Well, I mean, people had to kind of find out for themselves. People had to kind of, especially religious people, had to come to terms with the fact that gay people are actual wonderful human beings, and they can actually have children if they can have wonderful families. They can have the same values as many other people have. I mean, it's just crazy that people for so long couldn't wrap their minds around this, and glad that they can now.
Yeah, just Google a list of famous, brilliant, wonderful people throughout history, going well back before 2015 or 1963, or you go back as far as you want. Homosexuality has been a thing forever. And some of the greatest people, arguably Michelangelo on the list. For example, I just want to go back to a time when religion was big, hot, and heavy. How much better a life would he have had if people had simply said, look, a certain number of people they're not about the opposite sex.
And there's so many people who, I'll just say 3 right now off the top of my head, who refuse to come out because they were entertainers and they didn't want to disappoint anybody. I mean, oh God, it just breaks my heart. There's Luther Vandross, who is my favorite R&B male singer.
Yeah, if you are the sexiest singer in the world, and
he's just the best.
Half of your fans are women.
Yeah.
And there's some concern that they might not find you as sexy if they know you're not drawn to their gender. Well, that's ridiculous.
It's
Why
a shame
is that
we lost him before he could come to terms
before he
with
could
this.
fully come out, be who he was.
And of course, Liberace. Although that was sort of like, everybody knew, but they didn't want to say.
Never came out.
It was just crazy. Little Richard
denied it, I think, until the end.
Yes.
And yet, it was an open secret.
Yeah.
Let people be who they are.
Right.
Yeah. Christopher Smith says Johnny Mathis. I didn't know that, but I don't doubt it. So yes, let them be who they are. 2019, when same-sex marriage is legalized in Northern Ireland. Real quick, one more on this date. Well, a couple more. It's National Color Day. I have no idea why. But I love the fact of color. I love the five senses. It's one of the reasons why I love Ayn Rand's philosophy, is because she validates the evidence of the senses. And it's National Color Day. Do some drawing. Do some art. We were doing art weekly, and we need to do that up again. We used to have a little group that would get together and talk about art once a week. That Amy, you ran that.
Yeah, it's called Meeting for Art.
Meeting for Art.
I know, I need to get back into that. Once things settle down, maybe after the holidays.
Yeah.
Just
after the war. We'll get to that. But happy National Color Day. If you're an artist, share some art online. Share it on Facebook. Share it to us, and we would love to see what you're doing. Or just anything to do with color. If you have a guitar, I love the color of guitars. The colors that are used are often same colors you would use on automobiles or ships, boats. Marine colors are great on a guitar. Although I'm usually a sunburst kind of guy, because I like natural. I like guitars that are made of wood to look like they're made of wood. Happy National Color Day. Oh, tell us your favorite color in the chat. For me, it's always red. I don't use that, by the way, for like online. You'll see other colors listed. Because for security questions, I have a different color I save for that. But it's always red. Red is the best color in the world. It's the color of passion, the color of blood, the color of heat, the color of fire, the color of everything good. Well, not everything good. Anyway, real quick, happy birthday to Christopher Lloyd, who is still with us at 85 years old. Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, 1,000 movies. And what a guy, Christopher Lloyd. And happy birthday to Jeffrey Lynn Goldblum. Yes, Jeff Goldblum is 71 years old today. Something I didn't know when looking up great birthdays for today. Jeff Goldblum is a piano player. And he's actually a really good jazz piano player. That's kind of fun. Mm-hmm. When I found out Hugh Laurie was a musician, I started listening to his music, and it's fun just to look up videos of him playing piano. Well, it turns out Jeff Goldblum is the same. Even more of a jazz kind of muso than Hugh Laurie is. Good piano player. So, happy birthday. Happy 71st to Jeff Goldblum. Now, we took a few minutes here to do all of our opening and intro. What about what we were doing this week? Well, that won't take but a moment, because I only participated in one show on the ARC UK, one of the reality shows. Link is in the show notes, YouTube description, or look on Facebook. And that's it.
All right, we're done. Bye. No,
okay.
I'm kidding.
Well, at least as far as the what are we doing this week section. No, because, well, that's good, too, because we've been going out. We've been living large.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of activity, which has been helping with
war weariness.
Well, we also have a dear, wonderful, beautiful friend who is in the hospital right now.
That's right.
And that's been...
So we've been to the hospital a few times for visits.
And
that's ongoing, so we're still keeping a candle lit, as it were.
Yes.
And waiting for the good news to keep happening.
Yes.
And hopefully it will. But what I've shared under our shameless self-promotion and what are we listening to this week's section are a few podcasts that I've been, I can't say enjoying because the topic is very heavy, but I think have been very good, have been worth listening to. And I highly recommend these to you. Barry Weiss, her podcast, Honestly, as well as her appearances on some other podcasts, has been outstanding this week. Sam Harris has actually been good this week. I know we have mixed feelings about Sam Harris. Those are listed. You should take a look at them. But toward the end there is an old podcast episode by Ilan Giorno of the Ayn Rand Institute. And it's an episode entitled, now get this, and see if you can guess the date, Washington's pro-Hamas foreign policy, in which he says America's policy of appeasement has encouraged Hamas. It has weakened a crucial ally, and it will cost us dearly. Ilan Giorno, May 17th, 2006.
Yep. Yeah, objectivists have been saying this for ages. What's going to be happening to Israel, to America? We lost 31 people. The 31 Americans were killed. 31 Americans were killed. 31 Americans were killed.
If you are not
murdered.
If you are an American and you are not outraged by what has happened to our ally in the Middle East, well, there's something wrong with you. But if you are not outraged by the 31 Americans, then there's really something wrong with you. But yes, again, this policy has been going on since Hamas was elected to take over Gaza in 2006. Speaking of the Ayn Rand Institute on an optimistic or good note, Nikos Sotirakopoulos' lecture from Ocon. So this is going back a few months, again, well before October 7th, but he did a lecture, The Left's Long War on Israel, which explains a good deal of what's happening now in reaction to what's happening in the Middle East. That lecture is on YouTube. It was released, 7-8 days ago, not long ago. And within 3 days, it was the 8th, and we're talking out of hundreds. Within 3 days, it was the 8th most watched video the Ayn Rand Institute has ever released. And this includes, videos of Ayn Rand speaking. I'm sure it's higher now. When I checked earlier this morning, it had gone from 199,000 views to 205,000 views. That's good news. And it's good news because these are the best of times, these are the worst of times, and the very worst of what's happening right now is what's happening in the Middle East. And the second worst thing that's happening right now is the reaction around the world. On the Ayn Rand Center UK, Rosie Ginsburg is pointing out, you can't even call the demonstrations that have been going on in support of Gaza and some explicitly in support of Hamas. You can't even call them demonstrations. You've got to call them what they are. They're celebrations. And that is the most, disheartening thing. The most outrageous thing, obviously, are the actions that have taken place in the Middle East. But the fact that there are people willing to celebrate what happened.
It's evil.
It's evil. It's evil, but it's also complicated. The question is why? Why are they celebrating?
Right.
And we're not going to get too much into that other than to say, I think it's important to understand why it's happening. And it happens for a number of reasons, some of which have a lot in common with what happened when I was young. Now, whenever I make the point that everything old is new again and everything we're going through, we've gone through before, I don't say that to minimize what's happening right now. I don't say that to say, it's not that big a deal. I say that to make the point that it's a very big deal. You should be justly concerned and even outraged. But this has happened again before, and it is not new. Nobody understands better than the people in Israel that this is not new. This war didn't start on October 7th. This war started in 2006 when Hamas was elected. And it started well before that. Israel is a country that is being attacked, not in the press, but by missiles on a regular basis. The so-called Iron Dome, which is this beautiful self-defense that they've got, knocks down missiles that are coming their way. Why are they having to knock down missiles that are coming their way on a regular basis? Don't tell me this war just started. This war has been going on. And to see college students acting today the same way they acted back in the 1960s, the early 1970s, protesting in the streets and at the universities, including joined by a number of their college professors, saying that America were the evil ones in the war. In some ways, it's worse right now. In some ways, it's not as bad. I'm not putting equivalence on it. I'm just saying we've been here before. And hopefully people find that not heartening, just eye-opening. We got through that. We will get through this. Hopefully we'll do it the right way so that it's less likely to happen again in the future. But the bigger topic, the bigger question for me, and Amy, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat, folks. What do you do when this stuff is happening? But you're also living your life. We've got friends who are going through medical procedures, one of whom is in the hospital with a very serious condition. And we've also got lives to live. Yeah. We've still got to go to the grocery store and buy groceries, and we've still got to do the things that have got to be done to maintain our households, and we've still got to take care of the people who are in our lives. And we still got values. You know, we talk about Halloween's coming up. Should we shut that down? Should we close our door to the kids who will come up? Should we not have any parties or celebrations? Should we not be attending movies, spending time with friends, falling in love? I think there are reasons why you can't let war stop life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a, I haven't gone through it entirely, but there's actually a, it's it's a group on Facebook called, IDF, Israel Defense Forces. And, it basically updates, there's updates about the soldiers in Israel, how they're being trained, how they're being entertained by various musical acts and stars in Israel, and how there are weddings going on. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, speaking Robert. Of, we will not let them stop us from living our lives. I've got to say...
There are weddings of soldiers. I'll just say that.
Yeah. I've got to say, we got some folks in the chat I don't always see. Dale is in the chat. Hello there. You're right. Christopher Lloyd. Christopher Lloyd is a great pianist? Well, okay. I guess all three of them then, Jeff Goldblum and Hugh Laurie that we've mentioned, are great pianists. Thank you for that. Stephen Katz is in the chat as well. Haven't seen him around. Glad to see you. Unfortunately, he says, I went to a protest against Israel at the University of Chicago. I think it was led by Robert Mearsheimer. I felt very uncomfortable there. Glad I left. I'm glad you left too. There's no reason to torture yourself. Absolutely. Yeah. Apollo Zeus wants to know where I hid the candy. I'm not going to say that while Amy's sitting here. That's the $64,000 question. And Jennifer is also in the chat. Hi, Jennifer. And thank you for joining us. I think, you mentioned the IDF is on Facebook. I mentioned the other day on the reality show, they're also on Twitter, and they've got a very good Twitter feed.
Oh, yeah.
They provide compelling evidence arguing against the mainstream narrative, both of the IDF as being brutal attackers, for example, being responsible for the hospital bombing, which they absolutely were not. They put the evidence out there. But just look at what they provide. There's a few things you might not want to see if you don't want to see the real tragedies. But look at their feeds. It's extremely informative. It's also very inspiring. So yeah, the IDF is also on Twitter, and they are sharing information. They do not want what's happening to be hidden or obscured by the news narratives. The idea of occupied Palestine. And by all means, look at both sides of that. But the evidence is compelling. Not only do I say that life needs to go on because life needs to go on, because we've got to get through the day, but I also recommend the perspective that we have taken after national disasters or after atrocities, after, say, 9/11, after September 11th in the United States. There was a time when all of the flights were stopped and all sorts of plans were canceled. Amy, you recently told the story of Andrew Bernstein, who was so outraged by what happened that he had a speech he was scheduled to give the next day here in Michigan, and his flight was canceled. He couldn't come give the speech. He jumps into, he was driving a little Honda, I think Civic at the time. He jumps into his car, drives 13 hours from New York to Michigan, because damn it, he wasn't going to let those bastards stop him from taking action. He was just dying to take action.
Right.
And obviously his speech which was originally on one topic, and he did give that speech, but a big part of it was just these bastards and what we need to do about them.
Yeah, I recall that at that point, I remember going to work the next day and wanting to go to work, and I wanted to, keep my shift, and I wanted to. My mantra at the time was business as usual. It was business. It was trade. It was effort. It was value for value, and it was the stuff of life, the stuff that dreams are made of, the stuff that is human, the stuff that is man worshipping, human worshipping, and human mind worshipping. And I thought business as usual, because they're not going to disrupt this living.
Damn right. There's an expression that's come up a few times, and it's exactly the right expression: business as usual. We remember Hank Reardon saying that in Atlas Shrugged. Jim Ashley in the chat says, suffering elsewhere in the world about which no one can do anything directly to stop cannot be a reason to stop living one's own life. To let such suffering invade one's serenity is not mentally healthy. Well, Jim, you're right. I would go a step further, and Gary Menard does that. He says, if Israel over the past decades can live, thrive, invent, excel, progress, and move forward amidst the attacks, wars, and hate, then certainly conscientious Americans can pay attention to world events, advocate for the good, battle evil ideas and ideologies, and still flourish in daily life. Gary, I've got to agree with you 101% there. I think it is an outrage if we allow the terrorists, the militants, the haters to stop us. And we've got to take it seriously. And there's no way you can read these stories without being heartbroken. I'm not suggesting stoicism in any way whatsoever. But we have got to continue to live what we are fighting for.
And I'll just say, check in with your Jewish friends. Support them, offer them whatever, if they need anything, be there for them, be there for your friends who are being affected by this, and take good care of yourself. Robert and I, we went out swimming. We went to the pool today and we did some laps and we sat in the hot tub and it was very, very good. So, take good care of yourself during this kind of, commotion and heartache. It's really important to keep your mind, body strength up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, don't let the bastards grind you down. It's sad that people usually say that about their employers, which is ridiculous, but we know better. Jennifer can tell that you're having a hard time because she says, Amy, can I bring you a flake bar? That is super sweet. Trust me, I have got really good candy bars in the house. I don't have anything as good as a flake bar. That's true, but I've got some good stuff in the house. And
those I think they were called Twists or something like that. They were kind of like flake bars. They were the Cadbury, the ones that we got from London that we brought over. Yes.
Yeah, and if we have any chocolate emergencies, Amy did buy me a box of Godiva chocolates for my birthday last week.
Yes.
And a box of chocolates lasts a long time with me because, well, if they're good chocolates. Candy bars are okay, but Godiva chocolates, you want to make those last.
Right.
Which, incidentally, folks, if you have trouble like me moderating your chocolate usage, buy really expensive, you've heard this advice before, buy really expensive chocolate because then you're not as tempted to eat a ton of it all in one sitting. It's better, so it's more satisfying, and also, you don't want to eat $20 worth of chocolate in one sitting. So, or if $20 isn't enough, no, I'd eat $20 worth of chocolate in one sitting. I do recommend Z Chocolat.
Yes.
Look that up on the internet. I don't have it in the show notes, but Z, the letter Z, Zeta, and the word chocolate. It's a French chocolate company. Very good. Outrageously expensive. You will not eat $20 worth of that in one sitting, or if you do, it won't be that much. That much chocolate, I mean. It's a little pricey. So, one of the weekly mailings that I get an email every week, and I recommended this recently. If you go to my Substack, robertnasir.substack.com, you'll see it. The folks at Human Progress, they put out a weekly newsletter of all the human progress out there. And usually I read it in the email and, click on the links that I think are going to be compelling. I didn't notice until I clicked on it this time and went to the webpage. It's actually titled Human Progress Doom Slayer. And it even has kind of doom lettering there for Halloween. Ooh. Doom Slayer. Which is kind of ironic if they are slaying doom.
How many Dungeons and Dragons points do you get for that?
Really? The subtitle is A Newsletter That Cuts Through the Gloom. Let me just read some. I'm not going to read it all because there's a lot. But let me read a few of the headlines here from the Weekly Progress Roundup. 1 month after experimental pig heart transplant, doctors say they see no signs of rejection or infection. Yeah, what are you going to replace a failed human heart with? Well, people are dying waiting for heart transplants. They're finally figuring out, well, maybe we replace, our friend Mark had this recently. We mentioned we had some folks who went through hospital. He just had one of his valves replaced with a bovine valve.
Yes.
Because in some ways it's better than using plastic. Oh, wow, cool. And if he gets hungry, he's got some beef on hand. No, it's very cool. But now they're doing whole hearts, and it's still in the experiment. They're still working it out. But they've got it working. New high-resolution map of the brain will help researchers better diagnose and treat diseases. I love brain mapping because I don't believe everything maps to the brain in human consciousness, but the more they can map, the better.
Yes.
And people do have brain illnesses and psychological challenges that can be treated through the brain. Very cool. Despite severe drought, Amazon deforestation continues to slow. Now you can argue, we don't need to save the rainforest, but rainforest is cool. If they can save it, without denying people property rights, I think that's a good thing. The islands that went from whale hunting to whale watching. Okay, I like whales too. Again, as long as property rights are respected, save the whales. Amazon introducing warehouse overhaul with robotics to speed deliveries. Well, we already knew they have some robotics in effect in assembly, that they're increasing that. You think, how much longer can Amazon continue to give us? They will send me, and I paid the Amazon Prime subscription, but every day, all day, they'll send me something like for $2.50 and have somebody drive it to my house. How long they can do that? Well, they keep increasing the robotics. They keep improving it. They're apparently going to do it forever. Medical imaging struggles to read dark skin. Researchers say they found a way to make it easier. A lot of the imaging it just doesn't work for African Americans as well as it does for Caucasians. They're fixing it. They're finding it out. That's so cool. Using AI to find missing hikers. They're using artificial intelligence to improve their searches.
Wow.
It goes on and on. There are dozens of stories, including links to some of their tweets. They're very short, very easy to digest. You should be receiving the Doomslayer. You should be receiving Human Progress's Doomslayer newsletter. I love that. And that's just one of the ones that I receive. I use Google News to aggregate my news. I'm subscribed to the New York Times. I have a lot of ways of getting the bad news, but you don't always get the good news unless you're willing to receive it. I recommend that you receive it. Highly recommend that. I had a post of mine. This is a post from a while back in which I said, I can understand why young people are talking about the Second Civil War. What do you mean the Second Civil War? Well, the time when Trump was president and everybody was saying, the left hates the right hates the left. They're as far apart as they've ever been. We're going to have another civil war on our hands. States like Texas want to secede. I think there were some liberal states that wanted to secede too. Second Civil War is coming. And I said, well, I can understand young people feeling that way, but people who are my age, if you're over 50 and you still think there's going to be a second Civil War, you've been through all this stuff before. You should know better. Well, I recently added a few things to that thread, and somebody came on and said, this is naive and dangerously deluded. So just in case anybody didn't know, I am naive and dangerously deluded. What do you think?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Totally. It's me. But, again, I get it. And again, I'm not saying that there's not a ton of outrages out there. The things that people are saying in response to world events today, most particularly the Middle East. Although, 3 months ago, they were crazy gluing themselves to the streets. The Just Stop Oil people are still out there throwing cans of tomato soup at artworks, which are happily well protected, but still there's property damage involved there. The crazies are out there. The crazies have always been out there. The crazy ideas are out there. This has always been a war of ideas. And yes, in Israel right now, it's also a hot war. It's got to be fought. You should be fighting. It's got to be understood. And you should be working to understand it. All I'm saying is, we say, we should go on with business as usual. Well, even the fight, business as usual. Don't give the bastards an even break. But don't think that this is something new in 2023. I've been going through this stuff since I was too young to know what I was going through. I hate to say things like, the more things change, the more they stay the same, because it sounds like I'm brushing it off. I hope I have made the point in my appearances, in our appearances on the Ayn Rand Center UK. We take this all very seriously, and I am disappointed with how it is being fought. As much as I approved of Joe Biden's early statements, I can't believe he's sending relief money to Gaza. Because as much as they say it's going to be stewarded, it's going to be targeted at relief efforts, any relief effort money that goes in is just money that Hamas doesn't have to spend to keep people alive. They can, as little as they were doing for their people, they can now do even less. It's fungible. Those funds are fungible, no matter how carefully we watch over where they get spent. So yes, as much as I've said good things about what Biden has done, he's almost wiping the slate with that one. Things are bad. Things are really, really bad. And you got to live your life. And it is probably more important at a time like this, I think Andrew Bernstein would agree, to be living as well as you can, to be living with moral certainty. It's times like these, it's when things are at their worst that you have got to be at your best.
Right. Yeah. So, in summary with all of this, I've been posting on my Facebook that there are a lot of reports that Jewish people in the States are very much being affected by the pro-Hamas, pro-murder protests, or whatever, pro-baby killing protests. And and how some people actually feel that they want to go back to Israel because they feel safer in Israel than in the States, and I don't blame them. And of course, I do appreciate when Yaron Brook talks about, this is a fog of war. We need to be careful about reports, about exactly the motives for things, who is bombing whom and why. And, of course, we can't just trust whatever Hamas is reporting to the New York Times. We need to not assume the worst or not assume anything. We need to kind of let it ride out after about 48 hours and see what, how it actually came down, and how it evolves through time. And of course, it's also not the time to assume that every, Muslim I see walking down Dearborn, Michigan, is, pro-Hamas and anti-Jewish people. So you you just have to kind of have some patience, have some grace, as it were, have strength, and in the meantime, look into places that you can support. If you want to, I think that there is a way to actually donate to the IDF, donate to a lot of different, ambulance companies, and I posted them on my wall a while back, a week ago, about how to donate and actually support, specifically support people in Israel, and where the money isn't going to, the Red Cross or whoever it may be. Doctors Without Borders is one. I've been getting a lot of these things that are coming up on my Facebook saying, "Oh, Doctors Without Borders, support all of the, the people in Gaza who are being murdered by the Jews," all this stuff, and it's just absolutely insane to see this. So yeah, there are places you can go to actually reach out and support, give direct support to Israelis, and to Jewish people around the States. I'm sure, there's quite a large Jewish community in Michigan, and I'm thinking about looking into some way to support them, or maybe even support the Ayan Hirsi Ali Foundation. So I'm sure they need help. So yeah, I mean, if you want to support, if you want to actually take action and give more direct support, you can do that. There are ways to do this. So, yeah.
Yeah, and small gestures mean a lot in this context,
Yes.
both for what you do to support the cause, but also for the sake of your own integrity and psychology.
Yeah.
One of the challenges at a time like this is, you're familiar with the concept of survivor's guilt. If you're involved in an accident and you're the only one or one of two or three people who survive, and there's something called survivor's guilt. And I think a lot of us feel something like that. And it's another reason why I remind people it is more important, not less, to go on living, because what you're living for and celebrating, prospering, doing good things, spending time with friends, falling in love, because that's what we're fighting for. And it doesn't matter what we're fighting unless we know what we're fighting for. And bottom line, with real life, all the things I talked about, getting through real life, all the things it takes just to sustain a life, and especially with the holiday season coming up, given the mix of tragedies and celebrations and the ordinary requirements, it's hard. It's hard to put it all together. It's hard to integrate tragedy and happiness. But hard or not, it's got to be done. And it's going to be done. It's going to be done. The only question is how reasonably, how effectively, how graciously we manage our joy and our suffering. I'll be talking more about that in future episodes of I don't know if it'll be life on Earth. It may be a while before that show resumes on the ARC UK. We are all war all the time right now until things change. But maybe we'll talk about that more on this show too. I think there's more to be said. There's more that's going to be said. Real quick, got a post-it note for the week. My post-it note for the week says, everything that was true is still true. It's interesting, the Detroit Symphony Orchestra had another concert last night, like they do every weekend. They're still playing music. They're still presenting. I know the previous weekend it was Rachmaninoff and Brahms. I forget who was on the stage last night. Every great book you've ever read is still a great story to be read. Every piece of music that you love, we went to see the classic rock band Yes night before last. Everything that you love is still what you love, and everything that you knew that was true is still true. My short version of that just says, you were right. And right now, again, it can seem wrong when part of the world is going through hell to listen to your favorite song, to eat your favorite foods, to do your favorite things, to spend time with your favorite people. It's not wrong. If you feel that twinge, that bit of incongruity, that's fine. That's psychology. That's the human mind at work. Don't let it stop you. Don't let anything stop you from being who you are, from living your virtues and living your values.
That's right.
Is there anything in the chat that I need to answer? I've been enjoying the chat, but I have missed a few of them. Before we wrap up.
You know, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, that's okay. I've been enjoying the chat tonight. It's very charming. I just haven't had too much that I needed to answer there. Folks, thank you for joining us.
One more thing. I just want to shout out to all the, if there are any objectivists out there or any people out there who are listening right now or in the future, if you are able to extricate yourself from the various Islamic death cults around the world, and you were able to better your life, think for yourself, understand what you wanted out of life, questioned your religion, gave up your religion, found a rational philosophy such as Ayn Rand's objectivism especially, I commend you, and my heart goes out to you, and my heart and my mind, everything goes out also to all of the objectivists out there who are Jewish or were, raised in a Jewish heritage, like Ayn Rand was. Ayn Rand was Jewish, came from a Jewish family in Russia, and it's really, 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 really important right now to support Jewish people and to support civilization. And to call out facts like the fact that Palestinians actually voted in the PLO, which then was taken over by Hamas, and they've been supporting Hamas in Gaza for the last 20 years. 20 years. 20 years. I'm just gonna, I want to lose it. That says something here. They could have, if they loved life, if they wanted to live their lives as human beings, they could have thrown Hamas out. They could have gotten help from Israel to do this. They could have completely eradicated any element of Islamic fundamentalism from their lives. But they chose not to. They chose not to. And the people in Gaza have moral agency. They're not just some sort of victimized non-human hamsters that we all just need to throw money at and aid. No. These are mothers who have chosen to use their children as cannon fodder. And that says something. These are choices they've made. And they're human beings, and we need to hold them accountable as human beings. So, all I can say is kudos to all of those ex-Muslims, ex-Islamists, and to all of those who have dug themselves out of any kind of religious tyranny that they've experienced in their lives and who are now living on earth.
Well, obviously I have to second that. As an American of Syrian descent, no courage on my part. My father was an American Christian, despite being a Syrian man. But as a Nasir, I want to hereby say that I invite all of the Nasirs, in fact, all of my cousins in the Middle East, to drop the religious ideology and join the modern world. Support modernity in the Middle East, which right now means supporting Israel. And I reach out to all of my cousins out there to do that. I can say that lightly because obviously I ain't that Syrian. It may be half of my blood, but no, I'm an American. I got American blood in my veins.
And since you mentioned that, my grandfather from Belarus was Jewish.
Oh, there you go.
And I know, whatever bloodlines. I don't know how that all works, but I was raised in a Catholic cult. What do I know? But
I do want to second that. I want to shout out to, again, anybody of Arabic descent, and especially anybody who was raised in a Muslim household. Yes. Anybody who was raised on Islam and has dropped it. Because I was raised Christian and dropped it. That's a lot easier than being raised Muslim and dropping that. Kudos to everybody out there, again, who is rational, who is advocating for reason, and who understands the moral basis behind a conflict like this.
And to all those people in Israel who are suffering because of this, and to all of the Jewish communities in the United States.
Yes. And if any of you young people are stuck in the narrative that says, well, Palestine has been occupied, they have reasons to fight even if Hamas is wrong, please, just, you don't have to listen to me. Just look at the history, look into the history, how Israel was formed, what steps they went through, what steps were taken over the course of this conflict, the two-state solution, which we talk about as if that's going to be a future thing. It's already been offered and rejected. The blockades other nations have had against allowing Palestinians into their countries. Hello, Egypt and Lebanon. Okay, we won't get into the details here about who's right and wrong. I think everybody knows, or at least has their opinion about that. But yes, again, my bottom line is know what we're fighting, but know what we're fighting for. What we're fighting for is the individual. Individual reason, individual sovereignty, individual rights, and you living your own best life. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. We will wrap it up now, but you guys have been great in the chat. I look forward to reading everything all over again, just in case I missed any of your messages. If you have any suggestions for future episodes of 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir, please put them into the chat or into the 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir Facebook group. Share it in there. More information on recent shows or how to contribute to this one, robertnasir.com. You'll find PayPal and Patreon links where you can become a sponsor of what we do here every Sunday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I want to thank those of you who already do that. You are the best. In fact, all of you are the best audience in podcasting. You're also some of the smartest people, looking at the comments that come in. Very, very cool.
If you want to support us, because we are open to support. Yeah.
And it may be for a while. I know this was a little political tonight, but it may be for a while that we'll be combining a little more of our usual Sunday wisdom with a little bit of our Thursday politics and philosophy, because that show is on hiatus for a bit. So I especially appreciate y'all being here. I won't say we'll see you on Thursday, but we will definitely see you, if not on the reality show, by next Sunday. In the meantime, we wish you every success that you so richly deserve. How do we know you deserve it? Because ne'er-do-wells troublemakers, bad guys do not watch a show like this, and they certainly don't stick around for the full 5 minutes. And as always, we wish you love.